Guys, I'm going to start a session, if that's okay. But I would like organizers to keep announcing. That will be helpful. We do have a very, very interesting session today, and that is related to roadmap for startups in food industry. So, as you know, startup ecosystem is growing, and so it is also impacting the food industry. There are new entrepreneurs, new companies looking to set up business in food industry. And today's session will be the roadmap for startup, for those looking for help in coming into food industry, for those looking to grow in food industry. It is just helpful to understand the ecosystem within which food industry operates, as well as to gain from experiences and knowledge of an esteemed panelist today. With me today, we have, as I said, we have a very esteemed panelist. I have Chetna Agarwal, who's Managing Director of Sache Wellness. Welcome, Chetna. Thank you so much. I also have Tanushri Garg, Director with Brandia Global. Welcome, Tanushri. And I have our very own Sachin Achintalwar from Suman Food Consultants, who will share his thoughts from a regulatory landscape point of view for anybody looking to enter within the food processing space. Starting with each panelist, I will, at least for Chetna, I'll appreciate if you can share a little bit about a perspective of your company. And then I will request Tanushri if you can share a little so that the audience is aware what your company does and how exactly are you a startup company. So it will, do you have a mic?
Hello. Hello. Yeah, thank you, Sagarji, for the opportunity. And to give a little bit of perspective that how did I actually start my venture, what led me into it. There's a little, just a little story that I was doing my normal MBA from a college in Bombay, and I finished my MBA Finance and Marketing. And then, as you know, people typically get recruited through campus recruitments. I also got recruited in an investment bank called JP Morgan in Bombay. Then I started working in the bank, and I just realized that this corporate career is very, very hectic. It is a very sedentary lifestyle that I am leading. So that got me a bit worried, and I thought, like, what can one do, because this is a career that one has to pursue. This is something that it is normal, to sit on your chair and work on your laptop. But at the same time, if you can incorporate little habits, little things in your life that can help you lead a better lifestyle, a better, healthier lifestyle, then it will help, in some way or the other without making much effort. So a thought came to me that we as Indians, as India, we are so bestowed with rich botanicals. We have such herbal, ingredients available at our disposal being this rich country. So I explored more into it. Then I thought that there should be a product which should be very convenient. It should be effortless. It should be delivered in such a format that it's not, it doesn't give a lot of, it's not more effort, that way. So we came up with this idea of delivering health in little packets, called tea bag. And now we are delivering herbal tea in our company. That's how it happened.
And my friends, this is how you go up the value chain. What Chetna is doing is not just offering tea, but looking to address the health issues or health concerns of the newer generation, the younger generation that is looking for same product with healthier alternatives. And Chetna, my compliments for getting that pulse right. Tanushri, if you can share a little about Brandia Global, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, Sagar, for having me here. It is my honor. So Brandia is a branding and a design studio. I started Brandia about 8 years back. I have a background in advertising and marketing, and I was doing my master's in London. And I realized that, the importance of branding vis-a-vis advertising and marketing. And that's when I came back to India with a vision to help Indian startups reap the benefits of branding, because I feel there's so much that brands in India, have such amazing products, such innovative ideas for startups, and branding can really help them go places. So that's when I started Brandio in 2013. And we've worked with over 150 startups over the last 8 years. And that's how Brandio came about.
Excellent, Tanushree. So we have an entrepreneur who's going to be sharing her experiences of a startup. We have Tanushree who will be sharing her experiences from a point of view of why branding is important and how an entrepreneur can go about. And Sachin, if you can share a quick perspective of why regulatory landscape is important for startups to consider, or why regulations are important for any startup or a new enterprise to consider in the food industry.
Hello. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. So hi everyone. Thanks Sagar sir for giving me an opportunity to present my views, and also thanks to Informa team for bringing me here. So as far as the regulatory aspects for the food industry is concerned, it has it has been changed. There is a complete transformation the way regulatory aspects are being today and what was there almost 5 to 6 years or at least 7, 8 years ago. So I will not take much of time, but maybe most of us who are in the food industry who knows that there were multiplicity of laws which were governing the food sector before FSSAI came into existence. And thanks to the earlier governments and earlier scientists and all the people who were actually very keen to bring all the food products under one single unified law. This is similar to that of GST, like one nation, one tax. So on similar lines, government has also brought one nation, one food law. But still there are some overlapping laws, and there are few laws which are overlapping the sector. But most of the things are brought under one umbrella, and it is being run by FSSAI, which is under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And it has brought massive changes in the way regulatory system works. And they have made this system not like a typical bureaucratic system, but they have done an inclusive involvement of all the stakeholders for the benefit of regulatory landscape for the entire food supply chain. And you can see in the last at least 5 to 7 years, how the food industry has grown and how food industry has used technology to change the consumer behavior, to change the health habits, and how conveniently we can order foods like from any of the e-commerce platforms. And that's how, so with the growing technology and with the growing food industry, the regulators are also changing the regulation at a rapid pace, I will say. And in order to meet those regulatory requirements, especially for the startups, there is a huge need to build that ecosystem. And this is where we thought of sharing our perspective, like how regulations are critical even before, after conceptualizing product, or even at the time of conceptualizing the product, how it is important to consider all the regulatory aspect to avoid any issues once the product is ready and once the concept is ready.
Thank you so much, Sachin. So friends, let's take an entrepreneur's perspective of startup. Chetna, if you can share when you went about saying that, all right, you want to have a tea product, which is a healthier option and an alternative. What was that challenge that you faced from a point of view of product development? Because as a startup, one of the first thought is, how am I going to develop the product? So if you can give a perspective of your product development process that you went about, a little bit perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is that being a startup, there are challenges all the way, and every step of the way, actually. The thing is, from the point of view of the product per se, first thing that we thought of is, are we going in a red ocean or a blue ocean? To just clarify what it is, basically a red ocean space is a space that there's already, like bloodbath. So there's already so many products, and you need to have a competitive edge. So you need to be a challenger brand. You need to have something special in your brand, some USP, so that people look at you. Or do you want to be in a blue ocean space? That is mostly, a space which is clean and which has, you're a category creator in that space. And yes, there are not many brands who are, competing in that space, but you have this great onus of educating the customers, which takes a lot of resources, which sucks a lot of resources, because you're the one starting to educate the consumers about this product. So one is that we had to consider, are we in this space or that space? And second thing that we had to see is, do we have a high P product market fit, PMF conviction that we call in our lingo. So the thing is that, if you have a very high PMF conviction, which is that you think your product is fitting the market perfectly, then it's automatically you're excited to launch that product. Now, who would be excited to launch like DVD or CD in this era? Nobody, because it's not high PMF conviction. And since, as you know, you spoke about it in your earlier panel, how heat and control is kind of going towards, they can see the market changing, people going towards beetroot chips and this, that. So we know that the market is moving towards healthier options, and that is how the conviction came. Now, the third step is that, you launch your product, if you have these two in place, and then you see what the customer is saying. You see there are going to be a lot of iterations, there are going to be a lot of beta versions. You cannot assume that, what I have launched is like the best product on earth. Market will correct you, market will come back to you and say, you did this wrong, did that. You should be open, flexible to experiment. And then, you will find your path. And there's an offtake, there's an acceptability, your financials, your balance sheet will tell you where are you going. And this is how we kind of went about for the product. And we thought that, yeah, herbal tea is something, and especially after Corona, I mean, we know that Ayurveda and herbs and this, that people just started having Tulsi drops and Giloy drops, like, day, morning and night. So yeah, I mean, we think we're in the right path.
I am sure Corona must have been good for business. Unfortunately for you also. Tanushree, since you are in branding, let's give a perspective to the audience as to why branding is required. Really, does an entrepreneur need to spend on branding? That's one question. And if so, how is it different from marketing? I mean, sometimes a entrepreneur confuses marketing with branding, and so just if you can highlight that aspect of it, the difference between branding and marketing, and why branding is important.
So I thank you, Sagar, for asking me that question, because there is a lot of confusion around marketing, branding, or advertising, and that's one way. How we get clients on board is through education. How can branding help businesses, whether it's startups, whether it's B2B or B2C businesses. So, very simply put, what is branding? Branding is actually similar to building your house, but it goes beyond just selecting your furniture and the color of your walls. It goes beyond just logo and your website. Branding is really building strong pillars and a strong foundation on which marketing activities are built. So, branding really has to be the foundation of everything you do once you've conceived your product or your service, right? So, and today we can all agree that we are overwhelmed with information, with ideas, with opinions because of the digital transformation, and more so after the pandemic. There is so many brands, in a sea of sameness today. And like Chetna was saying, that in this whole red ocean, sorry, yes, in the whole red ocean where there are so many brands competing for our attention, branding really helps captivate your audience. Branding helps engaging and nurturing your audience. That's what branding is. Branding helps give you confidence to carry your brand. Once you have that professional look and feel to your business, it really gives credibility. It also extends a lot of credibility to your product or your service, apart from differentiating it in a sea of sameness. And to answer to your question and about the difference between branding and marketing, we truly believe that branding is telling an authentic story about your brand or your product or your service, whereas marketing is about selling. Branding is about, creating that message, and marketing is about delivering that message. So, branding is when you go beyond your product or your service benefit to really engage and, build meaningful experiences for your audience. That's what branding is. And of course, branding is strategic, marketing is tactical. And I think it's a no-brainer by now that, branding precedes marketing, because obviously creation comes before promotion. So largely that's what, branding is, and the difference between branding and marketing, a subject very close to my heart. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It definitely helps in understanding the difference. I guess one is about selling your product, and second is about how you position your product.
Absolutely.
Versus in that whole selling landscape. Excellent. Sachin, from your perspective, tell me, if I am an entrepreneur, I am a startup, what is the first thing from FSSAI point of view that I should be looking at from a point of view of my product that I'm looking to put it out for consumers in the market from a regulatory FSSAI point of view?
Thanks, sir. Thanks for this pertinent question. So just to add, in addition to FSSAI, there are multiplicity of laws still governing the sector. So I will come to the FSSAI point later. So we as a startup or anyone who is venturing into food business, irrespective of the category, they should be mindful of the fact that there are other laws like legal metrology, like plastic waste management. Like nowadays, there's a lot of emphasis going on sustainability. So we all also need to understand we should be very responsible towards the environment in terms of what kind of packaging we are using. And also from a consumer protection standpoint, the legal metrology will come into picture and BIS and other applicable laws. However, the kind of information which is going on the packaging does not mislead to the consumer, and it should not lead to any misbranding, and also it should not lead to regulatory issues. Now, coming back to the very critical and which is very hard to any food business is the FSSAI compliance. So as I said earlier, it is the one nation, one food law, which has brought all the or most of the laws governing the food sector under one umbrella. So the first and critical thing what you as an entrepreneur needs to understand, the category in which you are actually manufacturing your product or planning to manufacture your product, whether the recipe or the formulation which your nutrition and R&D team is working on, whether all those ingredients and additives are allowed in the applicable FSSAI regulation or not, also to the label, and if there is if any of the additive or its permissible level is not allowed, obviously you need to change the recipe in the beginning itself, because at the time of concept, like we always say, concept to sell, or conceptualizing the product, then doing other associated activities till it reaches to the end product. So why at the time of concept stage itself, you need to ensure that it is complying to applicable FSSAI norms. Otherwise, it will be a complete rework. So hence, it is very critical as a food entrepreneur or entrepreneur in the food space, you need to ensure the compliance as per applicable regulations of FSSAI.
Thanks, Sachin. For the audience, to give you a perspective, you may take an FSSAI license, but if the categorization of that license itself is wrong, then you are limited to that a particular area only, and you cannot do that. For example, if you are a reseller, even today, I guess Sachin, I'll let Sachin elaborate as we ask further questions. But right now, let me move forward from a Chetna's perspective. I guess, Chetna, one of the things that a startup looks at, another challenge one face, is with regard to funding. So for example, if I want to start, I have my funds, but then what are the challenges you face from a funding point of view, and how can entrepreneur look to overcome these challenges within his limited resources?
Limited resources, yeah. Totally. So we were talking about companies here, 100 years old, 160 years old, and you have such a diverse panel talking about like really, just the ones that have just started, called startups. Of course, there is, the two very important things that I think: financial resources and human resources. And you always feel that you are limited there, and especially financial resources, you always, no matter how much money you have, you always feel, that it is less, because your vision though is already a big vision, but your wish list keeps increasing. So now this is something that you're going to face any which way, and being a startup, you will definitely feel that you are in a bootstrap condition where you are kind of, you have to do within your limited resources. As a startup, you are already starting at a shoestring budget, and there are only that many limited options, and you have to explore within that many limited options. Now, if I have to kind of categorize, one can say that either you can, you need to see what channels of funding are there. It could be in equity kind of channel, or it could be a debt kind of a channel. In equity, again, you have two options. You can put in your money, your savings, whatever you have, you wish to put. And then obviously there's going to be a limit to that. So you can go for VC funding, that is venture capital funding. But then you need to have a proof of concept for quite some time for the other one to kind of buy into your concept and product. And the other option that you can explore is debt option, going to banks or financial institutions. But then again, you'll have a problem of collateral. I mean, these things. So the channels that you're going to, there are these many limited channels. You can see what works best for you. You can have a mix of equity and debt. And because you will need money for your working capital, your capital assets, whatever it is. But one thing as a startup that you need to keep in mind is that how much money am I putting today and how much money am I putting tomorrow? Basically, the prioritizing of it. Because sometimes when you get funds, you see, biggest companies go wrong. They get funds, they get excited and start putting here and there thinking, I have so much money today. So planning and prioritizing the funds that you have is the first thing that you should, is also one thing that you should be really careful about. Yeah.
We'll get into the planning aspect. I would like to highlight to the audience that there is a third aspect of funding also that is available other than equity and debt, and that is through subsidy. So if food industry is a thrust area of government of India and almost every state of the country. So each state has a subsidy allocation associated with food industry, which they allocate on the basis of the project cost and the location. The subsidy allocation is different. And then the central government has their own subsidy also, which is allocated. That is subject to where you are putting that food processing plant. So that's something we can talk in a question answer session or offline whenever we go. But I would like to take that thought forward and ask Tanushri. Tanushri, from your side, as a Brandio Global Head, what are you seeing as challenges that entrepreneurs and startups face in food industry, in brand building? So if you can throw a little bit light of the challenges faced.
Absolutely, Sagar. So I think, from my experience with so many entrepreneurs in the food industry, I feel the primary challenge that people face is where to start. They have a product idea, service idea, but where to start in terms of taking it to the market. So that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face today. They have a product and service idea and they're like, okay, let's make a website and let's start going to market. But I think, we need to sometimes take a step back and really understand our strategy in terms of really plan, like Chetna was saying, really plan even in terms of your brand launch. From before you make a website and really go to market, obviously e-commerce is becoming a very big option to really get to the audience today. But before all of that, I think it's very important to take a step back and understand a few vital questions as to, what problem is your product solving, or, what value add is it making in your customers' lives. So some of these brand strategic questions needs to be answered before you really jump the gun and start going to the market. So one of the biggest challenges is where to start. The other challenge that entrepreneurs are facing, I think, is authenticity. Whether it's sometimes at the client side or the agency side, again, there's so many brands which are being born every day. And, there is very little authenticity and originality these days. We take inspiration from other brands, but, sometimes that line gets very blurred. So it's very, very important to stay true to your inspiration, stay true to your story, stay true to your product or service. So I think it's very, very important to stay authentic. That's another challenge. And I think the third being objectivity. As brand owners, we feel that, what do we like as a brand owner? But I think you really need to, again, pause and think that you are creating a brand for your audience. So you need to bring in that objectivity in your branding and marketing, because you obviously at the end of the day, you might feel that I like these colors and I like this communication, but it's actually at the end of the day, it's for your audience. So you need to bring in objectivity as any startup, as any entrepreneur, as any business owner. That's another challenge that I'm seeing a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs facing today. I think, yeah, if I could summarize it to that.
Thanks, Tanushree. Sachin, a perspective from your side. Let's assume I am an entrepreneur and I want to sell I've taken an FSSAI license. I want to sell my product online. All right. Now I have two options. One is selling it through third-party online platforms like Amazon or other platforms. And second is starting and trying to sell, because that's the fastest way I can put my product out there, right? And second is starting and trying to sell it through my own e-commerce platform. Okay, what are the implications from a licensing point of view that an entrepreneur needs to keep in mind if he's looking to sell through these two channels? If you can share a perspective.
So basically, I'll just quickly give you the overview of FSSAI licensing in general. Then I will move to the e-com and D2C space. So as far as FSSAI licensing is concerned, it is a 3-tier structure. One is basically the registration. If your annual turnover is up to 12 lakh, then the second tier is basically the state licensing. That depends on your capacity, that depends on your turnover, the storage capacity, blah, blah, blah. So there are multiple kind of businesses, which I will just quickly brief as well. And the third and important is obviously the central licensing. So the way the structure is designed by FSSAI is also depending on the kind of business you are in. So for example, if you are importing any food article or any finished product or a raw material or an ingredient, you need to get a central FSSAI license under importer category, because importer is a central subject. On similar lines, if you want to export any of your product, then obviously you need an export license from FSSAI. Again, that is a central subject. So coming back to the way licensing is designed, so in a nutshell, except farmer and the end consumer, I just would like to reiterate, whoever is involved in the supply chain, except these two, everyone needs to obtain the license as per their eligibility criteria. Starting from your mandis, where the traders buy goods from or buy commodities from the farmers, till it reaches to the end customer, including the retailer in the last leg of the supply chain, everyone needs to comply and everyone needs to obtain the license as per FSSAI classification. Now, coming back to the startups ecosystem, so as Sagar sir rightly mentioned, so now obviously you will not have that distribution muscle or distribution power to distribute it offline throughout the country as that of ITCs or Britannias of the world, or any typical FMCG giant in our country who has their deep roots till the village level by virtue of their offline distribution strength. and the kind of distribution chain which they have developed over a period of time. So in terms of the way this supply chain is evolved, especially in last 5 years, and with the advent of e-commerce, and when these third-party e-commerce platforms or the marketplace model of Amazon, Flipkart, or Snapdeal, or any other inventory-based or marketplace-based models came into existence. And now in the last 3 years, especially after the pandemic, you must have seen the growth of D2C channel as a sector, not only restricted to food, but across. So over a period of time, the licensing regime has also evolved. So as far as if you want to sell your products through e-commerce channel, through your own website, so you need to obtain a license under e-commerce category, or which is called as a kind of business in the FSSAI language. So you need to apply for e-commerce license from the central FSSAI authorities in your respective region. But however, if you want to sell these products through e-commerce platforms like Amazon or Flipkarts of the world, so typically they also have multiple models in terms of merchant fulfillment, which can be fulfilled from your own warehouse or from your own factory or from your own place. Or you can use their fulfillment channel, like Amazon has a Prime channel, which is fulfilled by Amazon, where you will store your inventory in their designated warehouses, and from there it will be directly sold to the customer. So especially the second one, which I just explained, there basically the number of warehouses where you will keep your inventory, and from there it will get invoiced to the end customer through the digitized model, or basically directly the invoices are auto-generated after placing the order, after confirming the order. So for that, each warehouse location from where you are actually storing and subsequently shipping the goods to the end customer, obviously through the help of e-commerce channel, for each and every warehouse location, you need to obtain a retailer license from the respective state government, depending on your turnover and the capacity. And also, if you are doing B2B through these channels, you need a wholesaler license. And if you are doing both, you can actually go ahead and apply under wholesaler and retailer together, so that you can do both wholesaler, wholesale and retail as well.
Thanks, Sachin. I am sure after what you have shared, there'll be entrepreneurs here who will be looking and going back, looking at their license categorization and trying to see, if it fulfills all the mandatory requirements or not. So let's move forward from in a startup ecosystem. Another aspect for food industry is in terms of team building. Like, let's assume that we need to have, obviously we have limited resources, but we need to build the right team around us and ensure that we get the maximum productivity. So what are the issues with regard to team building, Chetna, that you faced, or that an entrepreneur should keep in mind?
Sure, Sagarji. Team building, yes, as I said that, financial resources and human resources are two very important aspects, and you will always feel that you do not have the best. And in terms of human resources or team building, it's a very big challenge for a startup, because, you cannot just go ahead and have very high qualified professionals in your team, in the first go. You cannot have like your dream team, when you are building, when you are in a startup setup. So you will have to actually kind of handpick the people that you want. You need to have people who are aligned with the founder's vision, who believe in you, who believe in your concept. And, they might be in their jobs very well settled, and you need to convince them that why do you need to, why join us. So it's the other way around. It's not, you sitting and asking people that, why should we take you? It's more like, you as a startup convincing people and saying that, please, why should you convincing people, why should they join you? It's more like that. So it's even more, it's very tough that ways. And the thing is that, one thing that you can do as a startup, which probably I did, is that you can look within your inner circle. You can find people, within your friend circle, within your relative, or within people, who kind of, know you as a person from the beginning, and are aligned to your concept and are ready to, sail in the same boat as you. Because when you handpick people as a startup, you have to make sure that they have the, the right talent, skill, and even the personality. So it's very difficult to find such people. That is one thing that you can do. And another thing that you can do as a policy to retain people is that you can give them ESOP options. Could be very premature in the beginning, but as you go ahead, it depends, what your policy is. I mean, generally, you can take a pool of 2% or 3% maximum in the beginning. I mean, that's also a lot in the beginning. So yeah, so an ESOP option could help you retain people, because stability is one thing that you're looking at that time. People come, okay, see what your concept is, and they leave. It's a big dent, because it's the team that is going to work. Of course, as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest challenges is that you are very much involved in the day-to-day operations. And that is something you have to do. You like it, you don't like it. And, but if you have a good team, it is really, you consider yourself blessed. So these are the things, the challenges, and then, how do you overcome them? Probably look in your inner circle or something, or ESOPs, or things like that. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I mean, you are getting hit from both the sides. One is it's about not just not just employee presenting their case to you, but you presenting your case to the employees. And on top of it, there are sometimes issues when an employee learns everything and decides to either start on his own or move to a bigger and better opportunity with experience. And that is a challenge a startup always face. And I guess ESOPs are something good option associated with it. And there is also, one thing that definitely a startup culture does offer is it provides anybody who is, looks a little further, an opportunity to learn all areas of business in a very, very fast way, which a bigger organization will not give you an opportunity. So that definitely is there. And the growth factor from bottom to top is much faster in a startup versus in a bigger organization. So that advantage for sometimes people who are smart employees, they definitely keep in mind. Tanushri, from your point of view, give me a perspective in terms of if I have to do branding of my product as a startup, I have limited resources, right? How much percentage should I be allocating financially from a branding and a marketing perspective?
Right. I think, Sagar, that's a very vital question, because again, people are very vague about the budget for branding. Of course, people understand that this is as much as I can spend for marketing, but the initial branding investment, people are quite vague about. So I think branding should definitely, because it's something which is a one-time effort. For at least it's an investment for a few years, and it stays with you. The brand creation stays with you for a while. So I think, anywhere between around 15 to 20% should go to your initial brand building. And
15 to 20% of
whatever your budget is, right? You were saying.
So should I look it from a sales perspective, 15 or 20% of my sales, or 15 to 20% of my
initial
initial investment?
Yes,
okay.
Initial funding.
Wow.
So, approximately it should be about 2 to 4 lakhs. Of course, it can be less or more depending on how much, your scope of work is, or how much you really, what phase you want to kind of invest that in. But it's around 2 to 4 lakhs is what you would need initially to start creating a brand, which does not include brand promotion, but largely just brand creation. And then, of course, for marketing and brand building and brand communication, and of course, your marketing activities on a month-on-month basis, there's a monthly retainer, because once you've built your brand, you have to continuously take it to market, communicate it to your audience through social media marketing, through digital marketing, through brand activations. Whatever your budget might be, the scope can vary. And that's when your monthly retainer with, either you build an in-house team or you outsource it to an agency, that varies depending on scope of work.
And I guess after that initial thrust and push, once your sales start growing, then you can keep a certain percentage allocation of that sales into, yeah.
Yes, that of course depends on your sales and volumes and things like that. Yes.
Sachin, in your last discussion, you mentioned something related to that an entrepreneur in food industry is himself responsible. Now, see, one of the challenges we in food industry faces, laws are not applicable on farmers. They can pretty much produce any quality of fruits or vegetables or cereal or grain. The entire onus, which by the way, in countries in Western world is not there. In Western world, laws related to food laws are also applicable on the farming community, right? Or people who are growing food. In India, that's not the case. How does that affect the food industry? I mean, how should food industry be looking at it from a point of view of ensuring proper quality processes in place? Just a little bit perspective, if you can share.
So the way the regulations are designed, even though we speak like farm to fork or farm to plate or kisan to consumer, but the way regulations are designed, farmers are exempted, as I mentioned. So, but over a period of time, if you see, by virtue of developing the ecosystem in past many years, and people are traveling across the globe, and we have also started exporting the goods. So that ecosystem is developing over a period of time, and farmers are getting trained with the right quality inputs. And the way farmers are actually doing this, growing in other Western countries, like with the help of good agricultural practices and all. But yeah, it's work in progress. Things are moving. So coming back to the challenges for the startups. So yes, so finding the right suppliers for their raw materials, finding the right suppliers for their packaging materials, and obviously the claims part that I will come at the end of my talk. So basically, how you as a startup need to ensure that whatever the raw materials which needs to be used in your product needs to be obtained from the licensed food manufacturers who are having valid license in that particular category for that particular raw material or a product. Also, you need to ensure that those raw materials are complying with the applicable norms as set by FSSAI. Because tomorrow, once you manufacture your product, and if there is any food safety incident, or if there is any failure in your finished product in terms of the regulatory parameters, so obviously it is depends on the quality of raw materials or the type of raw material which is being used in the product. So this is how this whole supply chain is dependent on the back end, especially if the raw material supply, because this is where the process starts, or the selection starts for the manufacturing any product, or even the conceptualizing any product. And subsequently, through the processes, by implementing the food safety management systems and other systems, including the good manufacturing practices, good transportation practices, good warehouse practices, you can actually build your brand and ensure that it is complying with all the applicable laws till it reaches to the end consumer. And one more point here I would like to highlight, may not be directly relevant to the question which is being asked, but just to talk about the branding. So there is always, or as well marketing as well. So there is always, healthy debate or argument between marketing team or branding team in terms of the positioning and the claims, the kind of claims which is being made on the product. But they will always feel that the regulatory team is always hindering their communication. But the thing is that there is a separate legislation or the regulation which is being issued by the government, by the FSSAI, on how you advertise and how you market your product. You should be truthful to your communication. You should be truthful to the facts about the products which, or the ingredients which are being in your product. And there are defined claim condition if you want to make trans fat free or cholesterol free or high protein or high fiber and so on. So it is very important, apart from labeling compliance, you also need to ensure that you are truthful to the facts and you are meeting to the claim guidelines as set by FSSAI.
Friends, I know we are kind of running short of time, and I'm going to ask my panelists last round of questions. And this will be a quick response on each of them. And I would like to Chetna, from your side, no. See, you are now here, successful, doing, at least, I mean, there are challenges ahead, but initial challenges have been overcome. Just give from your side an example that you overcame, which probably was, if you had not overcome, you would have pretty much said, let's just shut down and think about something else, or as an entrepreneur that would not have taken you forward, or that helped you in taking it forward. Any example or challenge that you think you overcame that entrepreneurs will be helpful for sharing?
Yeah. So Sagarji, as an entrepreneur, there are challenges, at least as you said in the initial phases, there are challenges that you're facing every step of the way, every day, to the extent that, because you are so day in, day out involved operationally and with your team at a very personal level, it's not like some cabin where you're sitting and your team is there on the floor working. It's not that setup at all. So the thing is, challenges you face every day, you have to sometimes become, the mother, you're solving, little disputes between the people, as small as that people will come to you and say, mujhe isse baat nahi karni hai, and you'll be like, what do you want me to do there? So, because you're not that professional a setup, you are a very personal set of people working together, achieving a goal. That is why I said you need that set of people, who are completely aligned to your goal. Challenges that we've been facing day in, day out, especially in the beginning, like getting the right product out, getting the ingredients as we want. And as probably Tanushree said, the authenticity, not in terms of branding, but in terms of the ingredient. That was one of the challenge that we faced in the beginning, where we had to really get our supply chain right. So to convince the farmers, saying that, this is the kind of ingredient we mean, this is the level of cleanliness we need. And they're saying that, why are you so finicky? Ye to sab chalta hai. Why aren't you picking what everybody else is picking? That is I think, the biggest challenge, where one day, like every other day in the beginning, we thought that let's just give up. किसी को कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा है. So हम क्या समझाने जा रहे हैं, like that. So yeah, but then, you overcome all of that. That's where you have to, those are the days where you have to find your inner strength, and only then, yeah.
Sure, every entrepreneur has a hair-raising experience, and each day goes by. Tanushree, from your side, quickly, if you can share a challenge, an example of a customer with a challenge in front of you, which your company helped overcome. Any perspective which you can give, that's an example for audience here.
Right. So I'll just start with a very personal experience. Actually, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't plan entrepreneurship. I was working in a brand consultancy and had no plans of, really starting this agency. And it so happened that I was consulting a client, and then I was not, agreeing with my boss, and I quit. And Brandior just happened accidentally. So I had a few set of clients to start with, but after 3 years, I really didn't know where my next client is coming from. So I think to really then, own up and be like, you started this, you've taken the responsibility of maybe, 5 to 7 people that time, and you really need to know how to get your clients. So that was a personal challenge, and, where I really learned how to market my agency and how to really get clients, because branding, way back in 2012-13, when I started, people weren't very aware of why the investment should be made in branding. Why should I invest in branding? Why should I spend so much money, whatever the XYZ amount, to do that? Of course, they understood the value in building a website and, taking a print ad out at that time, but they didn't understand the value of branding. So to really, that it got a little exhausting in the beginning, though my vision was to educate people and convince them about the importance of branding. After a certain point, it got very exhausting to kind of keep telling people the importance of branding. And I think over a period of time, we got like-minded people in the team who was aligned to my vision. And, together we continually keep educating people. So yes, I think the biggest challenge in my field was to tell people about the importance of branding. And I think that's one challenge where even now, though it's becoming easier with time and with the whole digital transformation, people know that branding helps differentiate their brand in a, with so among so many other competitors. But it is a continually ongoing challenge to convince people about why should you invest in branding and continue to invest in branding as part of a business. So yes, I think that's one of the challenges which we have overcome and are continuing in smaller ways to overcome even now.
Thanks, Tanushree. Sachin, any final thoughts that you would like audience to keep in mind, regulatory point of view for as a startup or as an entrepreneur, that would be helpful for them to take home?
Yeah. So, as far as food laws are concerned, these are highly dynamic in nature, and it is changing with a rapid pace with the global advancement. So, I'll just quickly give you one example and where how the regulator is quickly responding to that. So, in last couple of years, we have seen there is a massive influx of brands who are actually claiming vegan or saying that they are vegan, or because in the absence of guidelines. So immediately the regulators also notice that, so there is a spurt of demand of such products, and in the absence of guidelines or in the absence of any regulations, sometimes few of such brands, or maybe because of lack of awareness, they are actually making a misleading claim or misleading positioning of their product, and indirectly it is impacting the consumer decision while buying the product. So typically what now is happening is that with the advent of technology and the rapid changes or advancement in the food processing sector, including the kind of products which are being launched across the globe. So on similar lines, our regulators are also keeping a close eye on that and changing the regulations at a rapid pace in sync with the global changes. So the latest example is FSSAI has already came out with the draft regulation on vegan foods. They have also launched the vegan logo. And now in future, once the notification is finalized and gazetted, obviously you need to comply to that, and you can't claim such product as vegan unless you don't comply to the requirements. So that is one aspect. And to summarize, you as a startup, obviously you will not have a dedicated resource or dedicated team who can manage the regulatory activities for your product. So obviously you can take help of the experts who are actually offering those services in the market and who are closely working with the regulators and also helping clients across the space, across the food spectrum. So you can always seek help from the experts to meet the compliance in sync with the changes in the law. So, and just to one more aspect, which obviously many of us are aware, that FSSAI has also come out with a new regulation on labeling and display, and there are many changes which has happened in this regulation, and industry is struggling to meet that deadline, and from the next month onwards this new regulation kicks in. So this is how you as a startups need to ensure that you are complying with the changing regulatory landscape from the respective regulators.
Thank you so much, Sachin. Friends, that was a very, very interesting discussion and a wonderful round of applause for the panelists, please. Wonderful thoughts shared here. With that, I like to thank esteemed panelists for enlightening the audience with regard to different aspects related to startup and how one can go about fulfilling their dreams within the food processing sector as an entrepreneur. So thank you so much. I really appreciate. A big round of applause, please, for the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you. With that, I like to conclude the session. Thank you so much.